So that leaves Brendan, Aiden, who else?
You did?
Yeah.
The unrelated Washington
Julia.
brothers are
Don't
not
you
here.
let me do this?
I'm like, she's like,
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. No, the fact that you saw that was so Rachel, your hair looks like Star Wars. In a good way.
Yeah, I kind of went crazy. I was supposed to do a podcast. And I was like, you know, there we go.
So we might have a couple sneak in,
Stragglers, yeah.
Brendan and Aiden, I think. They'll probably be here. Hey, I'm gonna let you introduce Rick, because you've known him longer than I have. I just met him.
15 minutes.
I've known you 15 minutes, but I know a bit about you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'll let you do the introduction. I think this is, even though Rick won't say this, it's an important conversation to have
Yeah.
about business, finance, and what's future, and whatever, income streams, all of that. He's seen it from the inside out, you know, kind of how things work, and sometimes the belly of the beast, and, you know, but, you know, a unique perspective
Yep.
on creatives, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, Casey, take it away.
Yeah, great. Rick, thanks for being here.
You bet.
Rick's daughter Brecken and my daughter Kaylee are close friends. They did a YWAM 6-month adventure together. This was a mission after high school years ago. So we've known each other outside of the workplace,
Yeah.
really mostly. But I've known Rick from afar as a business person in the business, and I'll have you explain the difference between a business manager and an artist manager.
Yeah.
So he's a business manager, and I'm gonna let him explain the difference. But I will say, the reason I didn't have my old CFO, Chris Kuhn, come and do this is because Chris knew the label business and he knew the publishing business, but he didn't know all the other ways that artists and creatives make money. He does, okay? He's had line of sight to that. So, so you beat out Chris,
Yeah.
too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty
That's so
Chris
cool.
and them now work together.
Yeah.
So, deep experience working with a variety of creatives, I'm assuming, and I think Ken was going to tell his story, and man, just hit him with your. Some of the questions I've seen you've posted are some really good ones, really meaningful. I mean, it's not often that we get to talk about the financial side of what a creative career looks like. So artist, writer, producer, with people that actually have some experience, knowledge in that, but Rick is one. So make use of this time. I'd like to start with us going around and introducing yourself, and you'd like to know.
Name, where you're from, and what's your focus, or when you graduate, what do you want to do?
Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
Hi everyone, my name is
Michael.
Michael.
Taylor's twin.
Yes, Taylor's younger brother. I am a upright bass performance major, and when I graduate, I'm hoping to do some form of either music business or session work, or some combination of that.
I'm Katrina. I am a worship arts major, senior, and
Where are you
Where
from?
you from?
I'm from West Virginia.
And a songwriter,
Yeah,
And
and
a-
songs and
and an artist. I always have to prompt you on that.
Is worship arts, is that like leading worship, or just
Yes,
being in and
yeah.
around worship in a church?
Yeah, leading worship.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, your twin just arrived. That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, please note if you're like industry studies, note that you're a writer, artist too. Some of you are you're just so multifaceted.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah.
Which is good.
Is it your turn? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Julia. I'm from Venezuela. I'm a songwriting major. I'm a senior, and looking to do like the artist thing after I graduate, and like also like worship industry.
Cool. Here in Nashville, or are you gonna
Yeah,
go back?
probably Nashville.
Okay. Nice.
Carson Cook. I grew up here, and I'm a production major, and I hope to do songwriting and production.
Okay.
when I graduate, so.
Production major being like a producer, like
Yes.
in the studio. Okay, good. Yeah. Very cool.
My name is Zarita. I'm from West Glacier, Montana, and I'm a songwriting major. And after I graduate, I'm gonna keep pursuing my artist career.
Nice. Very cool. I'm from Idaho, so
Hey!
the Great Northwest.
From the Panhandle or the?
Both in Boise area, and then moved to the Panhandle. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
know
certain
Idaho.
something about the people in the Panhandle. So.
Yeah, they're
We might get to that.
they're
Maybe
different.
not. They're different.
I'm Evan. I'm from Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm a producer, mix engineer, artist. And after school, I'd like to do the artist thing, but I think I'd like to be an engineer or session player,
Yeah.
anything to make money.
You're one of those multi-talented, multi-instrumentalists.
I play guitar.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Awesome. Michael.
Taylor.
Taylor,
I'm
sorry.
Ta-
I always get them
I
mixed
know,
up.
Yeah.
Twins.
I'm Taylor. I snuck in. I'm a production major / composer. I'm a mainly want to do film composition, but drums,
Yeah.
piano, guitar, play all those things.
And you're eating ice cream.
I'm eating ice cream. I came straight from the calf. So
We're from Franklin, Tennessee.
Yeah. Originally Colorado.
Originally.
We were born in Cal.
Right. So I know these guys. So.
He knows all the secrets.
And I'm Rachel. I am a songwriting major. I'm a senior and graduating in May. And I want to be an artist, songwriter, like gigging, bass playing, whatever, you know?
Nice.
So,
Bass guitar, best instrument on the planet.
yeah.
That's right. And we know who you are,
I'm Brown. Yeah.
Brown Bannister.
Just glad to be here.
15 Grammys. Who's counting?
Yeah.
26
Our
Dove
dean,
Awards.
Our dean always introduces me and says, between Brown and I, we've won 15 Grammys.
I love it.
It's a line, see, it always works.
Yeah, right,
It's so
right.
funny.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm gonna start using that.
I'll use it as well. Well, I'm Rick Myers. I've been in the business. I just did it. I had to get the calculator out to figure out how long. It's been 34 years I've been in the music business. I started as an artist, as a bass guitarist, originally playing in bands. I came to originally from Idaho, which is the Great Northwest, not Iowa. Because there's potatoes in Idaho and there's corn in Iowa. So my Nebraska friend knows all about that. And so a lot of people are like, oh, Iowa. No, Idaho. I went to one semester of college, failed miserably, and my dad said I had two choices. So I could go in the military and go in the military. So I went in the military for 5 years, grew up really fast, fell in love with playing bass guitar in the military, and ended up getting married and got out and ended up coming to Belmont University. So my goal when I got to town was to be Amy Grant's bass guitarist. And this is Mr. Bannister was producing her quite a bit back then. Actually, she was in your Sunday school class.
She was in my youth group.
In your youth group, and you did an A&R job from your youth group in Sunday school
Even
class.
before I knew what A&R was.
Right.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so I ended up going to Belmont and going to the music business program with an emphasis in recording studio, music production, and I love that program and started working in recording studios in Nashville and Music Row as an intern, and I did. I kept seeing 50-year-old guys rolling chords at 3 a.m. and I was like, okay, that I don't want to be that guy someday. And so, because I wasn't very good in the studio, so ended up seeing the studio manager. He's leaving every night, drove a really nice car, and I connected with him and said, what do you do? And he managed the studio, the business side of the studio. So I quickly flipped and became his intern. I don't know if you know Andrew Couts or not. Ring a bell. I'll tell his story later, but. I started.
Was he a Big Machine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
he's
know him.
president of
Yeah.
Big Machine Label
Yeah.
Group. Yeah, good guy, good man. Known him for 31 years, I think. So
And
it's
so you
really
became his intern.
Became his intern, and then I got an A in a 7 a.m. accounting class, a part of that music business program. And professor pulled me aside. You know how these professors are. They pulled me aside and said, "You need to change your degree to accounting, because if you graduate music business, you're going to work in the mailroom for a couple of years." Back when they had mailrooms. And if you graduate accounting, you can start on the 5th or 6th floor making money. And so I changed my degree to accounting, and it's kind of never looked back ever since. So I consider myself an entertainment CPA. Yes, I've been a business manager 18 years of my career, but record labels the rest of my time. So I went to work for, this might ring a bell, a guy named Charlie Lico while I was going to college. And Charlie was an artist manager. He managed a bunch of artists, and he had a dream of doing a record label, and he got that funded by Pioneer Electronics. And so our first big artist was CeCe Winans, who you produced and got a Dove Award and a Grammy Award, probably. And so CeCe was our big artist at the time, and so we did that for several years. And then I needed to become a CPA, so I had to go to a CPA firm. So I went to a CPA firm for 2 years and did tax until blood spurted out of my eyes. I couldn't do it anymore. And then I went from there, a guy named, these guys both know, a guy named Sam Chappell. He got out of his vacation break, and he came back to Nashville and started a management company with Toby and Joey from Goatee Records. And Toby from DC Talk, or Toby Mac as he's called now. And I did all the business management for all those artists. So back in the day, Out of Eden and Katinas and all those guys that were, a lot of you did all the a lot of the publishing for those. Yeah. So that was a fun run. I did business management primarily for all those artists, and then I started consulting, doing record royalty accounting. So I've got that background experience for Goatee and Jeff Mosley at INO, who you know very well. And that was a fun experience. And then Goatee sold to Capitol, and so I handed all the royalty accounting over to you guys. And anyways, I went from there to, I really got kind of burned out on the Christian music business. And some of you may have experienced some of that, but I ended up taking a break for about 2 years, and I just did consulting. And then I got recruited to go to Integrity Music, which is a big record label down in Mobile, Alabama, first big worship label. So I've got a lot of experience with worship artists who want to be worship leaders. Ended up working at Integrity for 5 years, and it sold, and I came back to Nashville and threw my shingle out as an entertainment CPA guy, and ended up working for reconnecting with Andrew Couts, who used to run the recording studio that I worked at, and he was now the employee number 2 at Big Machine Label Group, and they had signed this little girl named Taylor Swift to the label, and the record label was taking off, and so he needed help in the back office building out all new accounting and royalty accounting systems and all that. So I dove in and worked for Big Machine for a long time, and I still do. And ended up becoming friends with Taylor and her family, and they were transitioning from a business management firm to building out their own business management functions. So they engaged me and 2 other CPAs to come in and build all that out for them. It was a great experience, and seeing a global star like that in her world around money and all that was very interesting. And then I was still doing consulting for record labels and a couple of Christian labels again, a record label named Reach Records, which is Lecrae and Andy Mineo and a bunch of Christian hip hop artists. And so Lecrae needed a business manager, so I started up another business management firm, and I did business management for him and all of his artists for about 6 years, 5.5 years. So that was a fun run, and then I got recruited to go to a private equity fund to buy recorded music assets. So instead of buying office buildings and apartment complexes, they bought Christian music catalogs. So a lot of the previous companies that I worked with, we were able to go and help them monetize their life's work and buy their catalogs, and we ended up becoming the biggest Christian music recorded asset owner in the world. So we raised $500 million in about a year, and $500 million, and deployed most of that capital. And so I was their chief operating officer of this fund for 4 years, and then COVID hit, and
that was.
it was Courage Music.
That's
Yeah.
Courage, yeah, right.
Courage, and they're based here in Nashville.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and everybody went, a little nutty, and so Big Machine called me and said, "I need you to come back." So I went to work for Big Machine Label Group full time as their head of finance and IT. I did that for 3.5 years, and then hired your old friend Chris Kuhn to come in and take my old job so I could transition to more of an operational role at Big Machine. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I manage a lot of projects for Big Machine. Big Machine was acquired by a company called Hybe out of Korea. They're a big K-pop band, a big K-pop label. Their big claim to fame is a band called BTS, which is the biggest K-pop band in the world. As you can look at the charts right now, I looked at the charts this morning, about 25% of the top 20 global singles are K-pop related. So, this K-pop Demon Hunters movie is really rocket shipping, all K-pop music. So we're owned by Hybe, and I've been to Korea 3 times in the last 8 months. And so it's a very cool company to be part of. And so that's really kind of my backstory and what I do. I'm married, been married 36 years to an interior designer, have 4 kids. I told Brown I wanted some ists in my life, a dentist or an orthodontist or a podiatrist, but all my kids are creative. So I have my oldest daughter is a custom rug designer, and she just did a rug for the artist Pink, and it's pink and about the size of that keyboard. It's $28,000. So she's really high-end rugs. And then my other daughter is, she is a...
Think about that.
Yeah, designer rug. My other daughter is a hair and makeup artist here in Nashville, and she's signed to an agency and does a lot of film and television work. She's having a blast. And then I have a 25-year-old son who is a professional photographer, works e-commerce, but he also does live photography for a music business. And then I have a 21-year-old son who is a custom car guy for a cool car shop. So they make nice cars for high-end entertainers. So, but that's really kind of my story. Anything else you'd like to hear or understand?
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Are you old enough to have done all those?
I was gonna say, that's a lot of routes.
You want me to tell the age? I'll tell the age.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Well, mainly it's record label and business management. Those are the
Yeah.
two kind of things that I've really focused on.
And
have
was
enjoyed.
the business management portion? Because I thought I saw a thing where you were going with O'Neill Haggerty.
Yeah, we started top of the year, and Big Machine pulled me back in. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm here as an entertainment CPA. So
Okay.
A recovering business manager.
Okay. Out of all those things, all those different roles, it's record labels and business management basically, but what have you enjoyed the most?
Well, it's interesting. I get that question pretty often, and the thing that I've always enjoyed most is the people. It's not actually the work or the function. It's always been the people, and that's one of the things I definitely want to leave behind is people are the most important part of your career path. And every job, every opportunity I've ever found has always been related or tied to a person. And so having really good people skills, being able to communicate, working those soft skills, being a good hang, if you will. When we were choosing bands to go out on the road for our artists, it was always like, do they have the skills and are they a good hang? When you're talking about bringing people in the studio, it's not just their quality of the music they play, it's about, are they a good hang? Can you spend 25 hours, with them in a studio or a bus or whatnot? So it's always been people, to me, has been the biggest thing. And I've got 2 people I've walked with for 31 years, and I've got a handful of mentors I've walked with for 20 years. And so it's always about the people. But when it comes to the work, I just love getting things done. So I'm more of an operator that has a finance and a technology background. So it's almost like somebody cast a vision, let's go figure out where we want to go, and then making that happen. So whether that's in a business management aspect of we're going to do a tour, a live tour, and we need to make money, and adjusting the budgets and tweaking all the levers to make it successful, or if it's a record, how much are we going to put into this record? What's the threshold and whatnot? So those are kind of the tactical sides, but I love the strategy and the operational side of doing the music business. So those are my favorite kind of parts. Yeah. What else?
Well, you were saying a minute ago, explain the difference between
Yeah, for their sake, the difference
an artist
between like
manager and a business manager.
the kind of work you do, business manager kind of scope,
Yeah.
versus an artist manager.
Yeah, artist
Because a lot of
manager-
time people will refer to these managers, and I'm not sure they.
Well, it depends on the artist manager you're talking about. Some artist managers are artist centric, and I mean they're artist manager centric, and they have artists around them. And then but the proper model that I admire and appreciate is the artist is in the center, and they have a team around them. So they have producers and attorneys and publishers and record labels and business managers and artist managers. Artist managers are always about the strategy. Where do we want to go with this artist? What relationships do we want to pull in? Where should the artist be signed? What label, what publisher, what producer do we pull into the studio? That's really artist manager kind of function. Business manager is about money, and anything an artist touches always has an aspect to money. And so whether it's a publishing deal or a record deal, so the business manager helps analyze all those different moving parts to help make whatever is in the best interest of the artist. So whether if you're talking about an advance from a record label, well, how long is it going to take to pay back that advance? Well, we pay the advance back, and we're doing a tour. How can we do a proper tour budget to make sure that we make money, pay the taxes, and still have a little bit left over at the end? So business manager really managing cash flow, paying all the bills, paying the taxes, paying the crew, all that. And then taxes are really important because there's a tax aspect to every one of your decisions that you make. And then to me, part of the business manager's job is wealth preservation. Artists love generating money, and they like to spend money. But if you can come up with a plan and figure out what do you want to be long term, artists like everything going up and to the right. They like a continually improving environment. But at some point in your life and career, a career is going to peak. Well, what happens when it trends downward? And so I always like to sit with the artist and do a long-term plan and figure out, what kind of money do you want to be able to make, when your career begins to dwindle off, and how do we pivot into other sources of revenue? And so building a financial plan for that artist to create wealth and then preserve that wealth and protect the wealth. So those are kind of business management functions.
Yeah. Any questions around that?
Do you run into artists that are delusional?
Of course.
That kind of think, well, there's always more where that came from.
Yeah.
And how do you have you had difficult artists to deal with, and
Yeah,
get that?
I had a handful of artists that the minute they got money or received any kind of money, they spent it, or they would spend it beforehand. And so to me, it turned into quality of life for me. Is that a long-term sustainable relationship I want to be connected to? And so, and a lot of times the artist is teachable and they're willing to have a longer-term play and a longer-term plan, then you can help them. But a lot of times you just can't. So it comes from a mindset. And so, so that's why, I like to sit with an artist and figure out, what are some of the longer-term plans and desires that you have, and then we can plan accordingly. And then lovingly remind them along the way, these are the things you said that were important to you, the goals and the priorities that you established, and we're staying on plan, but if you spend that money there or buy that car or buy that house, it has an impact. So it's all about transparency, helping the artists understand, how the money's being spent, where it's going, and, are we staying on plan? So, yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, good question?
Can you describe kind of, maybe not some of the specifics, but like a long-term plan? Like, are you already dealing with the money that they have, or are you helping them find sources?
Yeah, an easy way to develop a long-term plan, and this can apply to no matter what career path you take, is figure out how much money, when financial freedom is not having to work, but you still have an income. And so a lot of times we'll sit down and figure out how much money do you want to have after taxes and after everything is paid? What's your annual, need, financial need? So say it's $100,000. The easiest way is divide that by 5%, and that's the amount of money you have to have sitting in a portfolio. That's $2 million. Sitting in a portfolio to pay all your bills, pay all your taxes, and still be able to survive, and that principal will not be diminished. So that's where I always start. Artist, what kind of lifestyle do you want to have, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? And that's how we build a plan. And then we incrementally, make decisions based on, are we on that plan? Sometimes that plan needs to come down or adjust up. And sometimes they have a big hit and you redo the plan. But basically it's trying to plan, create cash flow requirements. What's your monthly, annual living expenses now? What do we need to do to generate that, and is that through advances or is that through additional ancillary sources, whether it be acting or sponsorship agreements or all the different sources of revenue an artist could make. So that's just a quick summary. Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Yeah.
Was it? I guess I don't know how to frame this question, but you started as an artist business manager, right?
I started as I wanted to be a player, studio guy, and then I went right into business management, artist management that led into business management. Yeah.
So then, was it a major step up when you're doing label or business management for labels? Is that because that seems like a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
When you're talking about advances and you're talking about making records and going on tours and there's a million different things versus all right, I'm managing this one person's or many different individuals' finances.
Yeah, it was very different, complete different transition from being a business manager, managing a person's wealth, and compared to being responsible for the finances of a record label. So a record label, in essence, is a bank. And so we fund the creation of recorded masters, and then we own those masters, and we pay the artists a proportionate share in producers. And then we actually are responsible for marketing and promoting that record. And so, and then hopefully everything goes well, but 90% of records don't make money. And so it's managing that, it comes down to portfolio management. You have a few really, of 10 artists, you have 1 or 2 that do really well. And then you have 3 or 4 in the middle that do okay, and then you have some that don't do well at all. So it's learning that portfolio theory and managing all those different artists within your basket of artists and cash flow for the record label. So managing cash flow for the artist, and you're managing cash flow for the record label. So it's a very different jump, but it's very rewarding and fun if you have the aptitude and desire to do it. So, any other questions? Taylor, you got the name right.
Have you ever managed, been a business manager for a producer? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that? Is it?
I highly recommend every producer. You probably had some good business managers over your life. Have a business manager. Maybe not when you start out, but producers. If producers are tied up paying bills, getting W-9s and ACH forms from people and musicians, and deal with the musicians union and all that stuff, that takes away from the creativity. So if you love to produce music and you have the skill set for it, and you have the ability to engage a business manager, I highly recommend it, because that's what they do. They deal with all the business side of your production life. So did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Expanding on that,
Mm-hmm.
At what point, you're trying to make a living as a business manager,
Yeah.
and an artist comes to you, there's a level, at what point are you willing to invest with them developmentally, as opposed to, I want somebody that's already got cash flow that I can actually realize a fee from?
That's a great question.
Because a lot of these, everybody here's in developmental stage. Yeah. So they're all trying to figure out how to get to that place where they can have a conversation and worry about how to accumulate $100,000 a year purely on interest. Okay?
Yeah, right. Well, it goes back to the portfolio theory that I mentioned about record labels, is that every business management firm has segments of those artists. So you have some very high level earning artists that pay the bills, and then you have a mid tier that kind of sustain, and then you have a developing act. So anybody coming up out of university would be considered development, and you end up taking a loss, and you spend a lot of time and effort on those individual artists for the first few years until they start, breaking. And so, but if there's not some green shoots coming through the grass, in the next 2 to 3 years, then you have to make a decision whether to let them go or not. And so it's tough, but ultimately you can't do it for free for long.
So I'm curious, how do you identify those people? I mean, for you, how would you identify somebody that you would want to take a risk on?
I was really fortunate to have a lot of clients just walk in the door, and so I never really had to deal much with that. But how you identify is, do they have a record deal? Do they have a publishing deal? Do they have a producer? Do they have an artist manager that's reputable? Are they working? And so, Clive Davis, who I admire greatly, had really three criteria to signing an artist at a record label. Clive Davis did Arista and Sony and all kinds of big artists, Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston, all these world-class artists. And one, do they have a unique sound? And so, if I say the band Rush, or if I say Mariah Carey or anybody, those artists have a unique and very unique, distinct sound. Do they have the ability to write songs or interpret other writers' songs and perform them really well? And then do they have a live show? When you go to their live show, do you walk away going, wow, I just dropped $100 to see that artist, and wow, can they carry an audience in a show? And I had a fourth one, it's the blue collar work ethic. So I've always used those. I learned that a long time ago from Clive Davis. And so those are some criteria that I look at, and especially when you're talking about developing acts. But the old adage, and some of you want to be artists in the room, is that when you start out and you go to an event and somebody brings you a cup of coffee, you're like, oh wow, thank you for this coffee. Thank you so much. You're so grateful and thankful. And then 2 or 3 years into your career, you're like, where's my coffee? Don't be that artist. So, but ultimately, that blue collar work ethic, do they have a unique sound? Do they have an ability to write or interpret songs? Do they have an ability to entertain an audience? Can you hold an audience? Is there some reason for people to come see you? Those are kind of criteria that I've always used when looking to work with somebody. And even when we talk about signing people at Big Machine, those are some of the criteria that we go through too. So, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's a good list.
And what does a business manager charge?
Yeah, there's really kind of two options. Some are fixed fees, so you agree on a monthly rate, and then you adjust that pretty much quarterly. If you're spending more time, then you can adjust up. If you're spending less, you adjust down. Rarely do you adjust down. But the typical is very similar to an artist manager. They make 5% of gross, except for merchandise. Typically, you've got the gross sales and merch less the cost, and then you make 5% of the merchandise. So, yeah. So, just those are really the two models that I've seen over the years.
Is it percentage more than fee?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, some artists, especially if they get up in their career and they have a certain level of success, they don't want to do a commission basis anymore, and they have the leverage, so they typically will flip to a retainer, a monthly retainer, or an annual retainer. So some of the very top artists that you guys have all seen and heard a lot of them have that kind of relationship with their business manager.
Yeah, because at that level, they're evaluating 5% of $100,000 versus $10 million.
Yeah,
right? That's right. Yeah, so they're willing to pay a nice flat fee.
Yeah.
As a business manager, you're not doing taxes as well, are you?
It depends. Some business management firms have a full in-house tax department. They have like O'Neill Hagman, perfect example. They have a full tax team there internally, but they also have full-time, 4 different business management groups. So, but then there's some firms that just do business management. They do all the bookkeeping and accounting, and they outsource the tax to another firm. So, like Flood Bumstead, they used to do all the tax. FBMM is a big firm here in town. and they've sold off their practice to a large CPA firm. They still work out of their office, but they're really two separate groups.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty common. Pretty common now.
Yeah, wow. Definitely want to get to your questions, but kind of just spinning off of this, and this is a little more granular. When as a business manager, and maybe as an artist manager too, I don't know if they're the same criteria, the revenue that you actually garnish for your fee. In other words, is it royalty? Is it publishing royalty income? Is it recording royalty income, artist income? Is it merch? Is it tour? Is it all of the above? Is there a standard practice?
For business managers, we commission all sources of revenue.
All sources.
But if you're talking about artists, their sources of income, a lot of times is you get an upfront advance from a record label or a publishing company. So the artist makes money off of that, and the manager and business manager as well. But the artists primarily make their money off of touring. So rarely do you make a lot of inbound royalties from record labels. If you write a lot and you're part of the project, and then the artist will make, writer royalties or, from the compositions that they create. But most of probably 80-90% of their earnings every year come from touring and merchandising. Those are the two primary sources.
I really wanted, you guys hear what he said? I really want you to hear what he said. Okay.
Yeah.
And this goes to where are the core sources of generating income?
Yeah.
Just looking at the economics of a creative life, okay? So if you could rank those,
Yeah.
could you take a stab
Sure,
at
sure.
ranking what those might look like for an artist that kind of does all of the above?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if an artist is fortunate enough to get a record deal, and some people are really negative about record labels, but show me an artist in the world today that has had global success without the help of one of the three major labels, UMG, Sony, or Warner. There's a handful of folks, but they all end up going through one of those major pipelines because they really have to have a global appeal. And so if an artist is fortunate enough to get a record label, get a record deal, there's typically some kind of an advance. Sometimes, most of the time, that advance is used to make the record, and so they maybe get a little bit of that. So, and then if they sign a publishing deal, if they are gifted enough to write songs, they can get a publishing advance. So those are two primary sources that the artists at the early stage of their career get in advance. But most, probably 80-90% of the revenues artists make is coming from touring. So that's doing live shows, getting paid guarantees for those shows, paying all the costs and having the net left over. So they make money there. And then merchandising. So selling hats and t-shirts and posters and all the different things that you have at a show. So those are the two other big buckets of money. And if you're fortunate enough and you have a large brand appeal, you can end up getting some kind of a sponsorship deal. Those are few and far between unless you're a high-level artist, but some junior artists will be able to get a sponsorship deal, which means that you partner with a brand of a beverage or a phone or some device and do a campaign. This doesn't come free. You have to do work for it, but you can actually make money from a sponsorship deal or a brand endorsement deal, as they're also called. And then if your product sells well and you wrote a lot of that, then a lot of the artists that I worked with were also songwriters, and they made a great quarterly income from their publishing. So highly recommend you write as many of the songs as long as they're good. And he's a publisher, so so you have those multiple streams or sources of income. A lot of artists have become influencers. I represented 3 different influencers on the internet, and so you make money off of affiliate sales or commissions or whatnot around those things that you market and promote on your socials. And so it's another source of income. But majority of the artists make money off of the touring and merchandising. Producers, they make it off their advances. So if you guys are going to do a record for somebody, you typically will get an advance. Most of the time, you don't see any follow-on royalties from that unless the artist recoups and the record does really well. So you make your money on the front end. And a lot of times, producers will get a fund, so they'll get $100,000 to do 4 or 5 sides or tracks, if you will. So it's your job to manage all the costs relative to that making of those tracks, and if there's anything left over, you can keep. So that's the way producers make their money. But then a lot of times producers will co-write the songs that they're producing, so they're getting the publishing share, they're getting the production share, and some of the producers have pivoted into creating, money, making revenues off of influencer kind of campaigns. So they'll start YouTube channels or Instagram channels talking about production skills and marketing, promoting content to make money off affiliate links of equipment and stuff like that. Not a lot, but that's another source for producers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Questions around this, anybody?
If you're to the point as a producer where you are getting that front end, whatever, $100,000, is that when you probably want a business manager?
Yeah, when I always recommend as soon as possible, because most creatives are not really good with money. It's just been my experience over 34 years. And the biggest challenge they have is cash flow and taxes. And all of a sudden they'll end up with a large tax bill. They won't have the cash for it. They'll borrow money to pay the tax bill. Now they've got the debt from that, and they're servicing the debt. And so as soon as possible. But yeah, I mean, when you get too busy and you've got so many production gigs coming in, or you're so many different events that you're being a producer for, you need to probably get a business manager ASAP. Even if you just had somebody do the basic bookkeeping and accounting, paying the bills and the union and I mean, I don't know if you're a union person or not, but paying the studio costs. And a lot of times producers don't use a lot of studios; they use their own studios. He did for a long time in Weston, right? Yeah, in your home studio. So, but yeah, as soon as possible. There's not a number. I couldn't say, hey, when you hit $100,000, but it's relative to your experience and your ability to manage cash. So. What else? What other questions y'all have?
Can you explain, in context of a label, artist and producer, the budget recoupment? just talk about recoupment.
Yeah.
Because I think it's hard to get your head around this as a newbie.
When you sign a record deal, and I assume you guys study some of this along the way, but if you're an artist, you sign a record deal, you are asking the bank, the label, to fund the creation of this master recording. And who owns that master recording? 99% of the time, the record label does. And they agree to pay you a royalty, a future royalty off the sales of that. And so if the label advances you any money, let's just make a nice round number, $100,000 to do the album, then the label has to recoup and recover that $100,000 before they owe you, artist, a royalty off of that. So it's like the bank. We want to get paid back our investment in the project before you make any money. And then the producers, depending on the type of deal they have, they either get a normally producers get anywhere from 5 to 15%. I don't know what your rate was like. He was high in demand, so he probably got a higher rate. But producers would recoup at the same kind of rate. So if they gave the producer $100,000 advance, the producer would have to recoup the $100,000 before at the artist rate before the producer gets paid anything. And sometimes, depending on the producer deal, it's from record one, or after recoupment is when the producer gets paid. So it's quite it's a very complicated business model, because the bank gets paid back first before anybody else gets paid. And a lot, like I mentioned before, 90% of those projects don't recoup. They don't make the money back. So the record label is taking all the risk. That's why they own all the rights, and they demand to own the rights. So, yeah, Taylor.
Along those lines, is it if the producer structures it really well to where, say they get that $100,000, but they only spend 90 on the record, do they get to keep that $10,000?
Oh yeah. Well, it depends on the deal. Sometimes if it's a fund, the record label's paying all the bills. there is, or the producer will get a fund and he'll pay all the bills, or they will pay all the bills. So if you're wise with your money and you have a good business manager, and pay the bills and you manage the budget really well, then you can keep the difference. But you're still on the hook for $100,000.
So then, if you kept that 10 grand, then it recoups, then you start getting royalties?
Well, after they recoup, if it's $100,000 that they gave you to do the record, you have to recoup the $100,000 first at the artist rate. So if the artist has a 15% royalty rate, you do $100,000 divided by 15, that's how many units they have to sell before that's gonna recoup. So most producers and artists don't see any record or royalties. So I mean, that's a sad fact, unless it's a very successful project. So that's why you make your money on the front end when you sign your deal, and then you have to quickly pivot and get into a touring mode, because that's where you're gonna make your money from the live shows and then the merchandise that comes from that. So, and even big artists, it's the same way. They make their money off of touring and merchandising.
So then does the money from touring merchandising, does most of that go to the label, or is that?
No, it depends on the type of deal you have. And about 20 years ago, they started these 360 deals. I think Paramore was the big, band, a big local band from Nashville, right? And they were one of the first big 360 deals, which the record label's like, hey, we're giving you this platform. You're gonna then go tour and do sponsorships and merchandising. We're helping you build this platform. We want to participate in those deals. So if the artist signed a 360 deal, Mariah Carey, a bunch of famous people have done 360 deals, then the record label will participate. They call it participation. They'll participate in those ancillary revenues. So merchandising, touring. Most deals are not like that. And so the artist keeps 100% of the touring, but they have to also pay business manager and artist manager. They have to pay all the tour costs. They have to pay all the musicians, the bus. And what do y'all think it costs to use a bus for one weekend? You mean that?
20 grand?
Close. Anybody else? If you're gonna go do a 3-city, if you do a 3-city run, Ohio, Nebraska, somebody else, and back to Nashville, it's about $35,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's includes the bus, the driver, the fuel, insurance, that's pulling a trailer. So that's just one weekend. So if you want to, everybody's like, oh, I want a bus. Well, you know how much a bus costs? Sorry, you have a van budget. So we're gonna put you in a van with a trailer, but then, it's paying your dues, and so. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to.
I was just gonna say, the 360 deals kind of were like a rage, and then it feels like, did they do them?
Yeah, they're still done.
People still do them?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, that would be, the advance would be commensurate to that though as well, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna get more money as an artist
Yeah.
because you're sharing more of your overall revenue with them.
Yeah.
So that's part of, it's
Yeah,
a
but
value
From a business
exchange.
A business manager tactic is that, hey, we're going to calculate the record label's portion, but if you want the artist out on the road, I can't afford to pay you your participation. So can we keep that this quarter? And so that's what business managers do. So you do the calculation, and you show the label, this is how much we owe you. But hey, if you want the artist on the road promoting the music that you own and control, so that was always a tactic of business managers with 360s. We would negotiate that with the label,
good.
or we'd pay half of what we owed.
Things they didn't think about when they first created them.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Unintended consequences.
For sure.
Yeah.
When did 360 deal? Wasn't that kind of around Napster and
It
when
was 2000, early
people
2000s.
started getting shaky about
the
the industry?
early 2000s.
Yeah.
I always felt, and I was on the publishing side, but the record deals that I looked at over the years, I was like, a 360 deal is probably fair in the sense that record labels spend most of the money in promoting and building the brand of an artist.
Yeah.
But record contracts weren't structured with that in mind when they were first created. So it always felt like, to me, that the 360 approach was too late.
Yeah.
They'd already established this business paradigm for
Mhm.
how a record artist contract worked, and it was much harder to see.
Yeah.
Is that
And it's hard to account for too. That
Yeah.
was, you know, from an accounting perspective, working a record label, it's like, oh man, how are we going to account for that? Your buddy Chris Kuhn is a master of figuring that out.
yeah,
So,
right. Yeah.
What other
Kristen, you
questions?
had a question?
I was gonna say, from my understanding, I thought that the artist gets an advance and then there's a recording cost, and those are two separate pools of money. Is that?
It depends on everything's negotiable, right? So if you get a direct artist advance, say $20,000, goes to the artist, that's their money to spend and do whatever. And then if there's a fund that the record label is going to manage, then but both, say there's an $80,000 recording budget, the artist still has to recoup $100,000. So yeah, so it just depends on the deal. So a lot of times, especially artists as they get into their third, fourth, you know, they're called option periods with your deals, and so you sign a recording contract. There's typically one solid and two options, and so at the end of the option period is the record label's option, so they can renew the contract if they want to. But typically on the first option, there's not a lot of negotiation. You're just blessed and favored to be part of the record label, and you're going to get whatever we're going to give you. But as the artist earns and records start selling or streaming starts happening, the artist gets more leverage, and they can go back and renegotiate in advance. So, and sometimes those advances are part of a calculation of what actually sold. So, and it just depends on the record label, your attorney, and all that. Whether you get just a straight up artist advance, or if you get a whole, you know, fund, or if it's split in, you know, two different buckets. So, but ultimately, the artist has to recoup everything.
In that situation where you're just splitting up the same amount of money, would it be better to say, hey, I just want a personal advance, no record fund of $50,000, and I'm gonna spend that to make the master, and then would then the artist own the master in
No.
that situation?
No, because again, that's the bank. The bank's taking all the risk. Some artists negotiate later on in their careers reversion rights. So, whereas if the label will fund the record, once it recoups to a certain point, then those rights of the recorded master can go to the artist. But most of the time, artists' early stage career don't have any leverage. They don't have the ability to negotiate something like that to get their masters. My friend Sam was a master attorney, and he got reversion rights in almost every one of his deals for his artists. And a lot of those artists call him even to this day saying thank you, because after a certain period, sometimes those master recordings will revert back to the artist, and they'll start earning money, you know, 20 years later. And so anyways, there's reversion rights, but ultimately when you're young and starting, you don't really have any leverage.
But it would be kind of synonymous with you buy a house, loan to the bank.
Yeah.
You pay the bank off, but the bank still owns the house.
Yeah. Yeah. But
That's
after you
kind of
pay
the record business.
Yeah, that's the record business. But
Yeah,
after you
right.
pay the bank back, they give you the title deed to the house, so now you own the house. But that's not the way it works.
Yeah, but unless you can negotiate
Yeah.
the ability to do
That's why if you have success, you
Yeah.
have a lot more leverage, and your attorneys have the ability to negotiate on your behalf to get you a better deal or reversion rights, or at least half the reversion rights. And in your publishing deal, you can, instead of being just a writer, now you're a co-pub, and you own part of the publisher's share. So as success happens, your leverage increases.
Yeah. The beauty of the publishing side is if you do happen to be a writer and you write songs that the radio and streaming continue to play for eons and eons, that's when you're more likely to recoup the advance on the publishing side and actually get the mailbox royalty money.
Yeah, they call it mailbox money.
Yeah, right.
One of my first experiences, I won't name names, but I ended up with a client, and he lived here in Nashville, and he had written an Elvis hit and a Willie Nelson hit. And every quarter, he got a minimum $500,000 in the mail from BMI and performance royalties.
Crazy.
So he's making $2 million a year off of those two big, huge hit songs. And he was a little nutty. He had 14 televisions in his house. So every room he went into, he had CNN on, It was crazy, but it's what some people do with the wealth that they earn. But it's like mailbox money. That had happened as like a conveyor belt of cash for like 25, 30 years. So it just depends. If you get a big hit song, change your life forever.
Yeah.
So did you get a piece of that because you managed him?
I did not want a piece of that one. I was with him for about a year. I did an hourly rate with that guy as the business manager. So, yeah, he was very different.
Yeah. I told some, maybe my publishing class folks, I had a mantra that a friend of mine told me, shared with me years ago in the music business. He was hard to obtain, is hard to maintain.
Yeah.
And, we didn't always have a choice of not signing those people.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you can get to a place where it's just not worth
Yeah.
working with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're early on in your career, or sometimes you're desperate and you need the cash flow, so you'll take on clients that you really don't want,
Yeah,
and
right.
you'll learn to deal with them. But as you mature in your career, then you can become more selective.
Yeah.
What does it take financially? I guess like if it's, let's say I have a guaranteed album, what does it take financially for that album to go through with an option?
What do you mean?
Like what do you look for if it's like, all right, we're deciding whether or not we're gonna go through with an option?
Oh, to renew an option,
Yes.
to renew them for,
Yes.
yeah. And most of the time, it's built into your contract, and it will say, that a certain dollar threshold will renew the option automatically, or B, there's a calculation that determines how much of an advance or a fund for the next record goes. But with an artist, we typically do three options. A 3-record deal with an artist at Big Machine. First record, we're just trying to look for audience growth, momentum, and not so much the financial side, but really is it starting to get attention? Are we starting to see, does it have legs? Is the thing starting to take off? Is there an audience forming underneath, a fan base that's growing?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, if you see that happening, then we'll renew the option. We'll go to option number 2. So it's not a number, it's more of a feel and a market, and is the market adapting to this artist? There's been dozens of artists since I've worked with Big Machine that they come in shiny, very excited, great music, everybody raging about the music, but it does nothing. And it baffles all of us. And so we cannot renew the option simply because, that's time and money, right? So, but on that second option, and the third option, or the third record, or third LP or EP or whatever, it really comes down to, are we seeing up into the right momentum? And if not, then we typically will pull off. And
So you're technically calling it, so it's first record guaranteed, then second
Second
record is
option.
called second
second
option.
option,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
and then third option.
I didn't know there was second record.
Well, no,
so
first option, second option. So you got a guarantee, first option, second option.
Gotcha, okay.
First option is the second year or
Yeah.
the second
Yes.
record.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
Yes.
confusing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
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 And publishers, publishing deals are really cool. Most of the time, publishers will give you a 1 year and a delivery requirement. So you sign a songwriter, they have to deliver. What did you guys typically have? one
12
song a month,
12
12,
songs, yeah.
12 songs a year. And then if those songs don't get cut and don't have any momentum, what did you guys do? Did you maybe extend another year?
No, it was the same thing. I remember Eddie DeGarmo, when he was leading our publishing division, he would always say it takes 3 or 4 years to really
Yeah.
build momentum
Yeah.
and develop with a developing writer. The same could be true of an artist.
Yeah.
So every option year, we're sitting together in a conference room as a business team evaluating, is the momentum good?
Yeah.
Do we want to outlay the money that it's going to cost in one more option period and roll the dice to see if they can get a hit or something like that that will pay everything off? So it was a yearly evaluation
Yeah.
for us. Yeah.
And they say Nashville's a 10-year town, so it takes 10 years for a career to develop and pop, and so you don't really see any success for 10 years. So most labels, when they sign those publishers, are typically an annual option once a year.
Mhm.
Labels are like the first record you has 18 to 24 months,
Right.
so it's a longer longer investment window, if you will. So we sign an artist, we're looking at a 3 or 4 or 5, 6 year commitment minimum. And so if we don't see up and to the right, momentum, audience growth, and whatnot, then we're off. We gotta pull off. So
I want to pivot, if I can, to the developing writer, artist, producer space. And what advice would you give them, this group, as far as where to focus their efforts, particularly from a financial perspective? In other words, if you're going to expend energy, here's the way you start building your brand. These are the pieces that are most likely to be revenue generators for you.
for writers or artists?
For either one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't quit your day job. You have to have a job to pay the bills. You know, if you're an artist and you're developing, you have to have a source of revenue. I would keep a day job or work a part-time job or whatnot. If you're just getting started, you have to have cash flow. And unless you have a wealthy benefactor or parents or whatever that strongly believe in you and want to fund you, you have to generate money some way to pay your bills. And then it's all about networking. I mean, you have the raw skills and the talent, the kind of the 4 things that I talked about earlier, some unique sound, the ability to write, you know, or interpret other people's songs. You have the ability to entertain a room, a crowd, and then you have the blue collar work ethic. If you have all of those, then you should, you know, network as much as you can and write with anybody you can. I mean, it's from a songwriter's perspective. And take just about every opportunity that you can. This is your peak, years to put forth the blue collar work ethic to make it happen. And so, any and every kind of opportunity, whether it be touring or co-writing or, you know, writing jingles or whatever, any kind of opportunity to make money, to do something that you love should be considered.
Can you explain taxes?
What would you like to know about taxes?
Just from the standpoint of planning.
Sure. So does everybody here have a job? Everybody work job somewhere? Are you W-2 or 1099? Does that ring a bell? W-2. Okay, when you're W-2, you write on your W-4 the number of exemptions you have, and that tells your employer how much taxes to withhold for federal taxes. But there's another portion, and it's called FICA, or Social Security tax. And so that tax, half is usually paid by the employer, half is withdrawn from your paycheck on a W-2. When you move over to, I'm a sole proprietor, I'm an independent musician, not on a W-2, then you're responsible for your federal taxes, plus you're responsible for your Social Security or Medicare, FICA they call it, or if you're self-employed, it's called self-employment tax. So you have to pay 100% of that too. So a good rule of thumb for an artist just starting out, if you don't want to get into tax trouble, every dollar that comes into your account, save 25%, 25 to 30% in a tax savings account, and just write the check to the IRS every single month. That's typically what we advise, and if you end up becoming working with a business manager, that's exactly what they're going to do. Every dollar that comes in, they're going to park in a tax savings account, and every quarter they're going to pay that tax in, whether you like it or not. Because if not, you're going to be in a tax problem. And when I started working with a very well-known top artist, he was about $940,000 in debt to the IRS, and they took his house. They took his cars, they took everything. And once you do that, then you have penalties and interest and all kinds of mess. So the 900s turns into $1.5 million very quickly. So you never want to get any problems with the IRS or the tax agencies. Pay your taxes, period. So, yeah.
So if you pay quarterly, if you ever pay, you just get that money back?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, typically you'll sit with a tax professional, they'll add up, they'll do an estimate for the whole year, and then you can do a quarterly estimates, and then if you overpay, then you'll get a refund at the end of the year. Or you'll adjust the next quarterly payment, so you're not paying too much.
How much of yearly income do you dedicate solely to just tax fund?
Yeah, if you're independent, not on a W-2, 1099 contractor, making money from gigs and merch and all that, you know, good rule of thumb is 30%.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I've been doing every dollar that comes in, 35%
Yeah.
goes
35.
into a tax account,
Yeah.
10% goes into a tithe account.
Yeah.
And I've never gotten in tax trouble
Yeah.
until I got sick a couple of years ago. I missed a year.
Oh, no.
But we got that taken care of.
Okay.
But that is a great rule of thumb.
Yeah.
It is a hard pill to swallow when you're not making much money.
Yeah.
Like really, I made $600 this month, and I
Yeah.
have to put, $150 away
Yeah.
to prepare. Talk to them though about things that offset your income in
Yeah.
terms of deductions for an artist or producer.
Yeah, so say if you're a producer and you have a home studio, you can qualify for a home office deduction, if you will. And if you make a $10,000 fee for a side or a track that you're gonna make, that's the top line, the gross income, 10,000 less any cost, any legitimate business costs. So that would be studio musicians you have to pay, any kind of equipment you have to pay for, meals and entertainment around the creation of that music, transportation costs, so you gotta fly somebody in, airfare off of that. So that all whittles it down to, depends on what your profit margin is. You may make $2,000 off of that. That's what you're gonna pay the tax on, the 35% of the $2,000. But as a general rule of thumb, most people, 10 grand comes in, 25 right off the top, 30 sometimes, 35 if you're paying tithes.
So,
If you wanna be blessed.
Yeah, yeah.
so then with deductions, are you like a relatively like play by the rules kind of guy? Like, oh yeah, business dinners with that's a write off. Like, how do you play it when it comes to that? Because I know there's some people who are like, I'm gonna write off every single thing and bend the rules as much as I
Yeah.
humanly possible. But
Yeah, well, it's risky, bending the rules, because they have, especially now with AI and all the algorithms, the IRS can analyze a return very quickly and it sends off red flags here and there. So, but generally, if you have good tax advice, just follow your tax advisors. They will coach you on what's deductible, what's not. But if you're gonna go out and have dinner with your friends and you're gonna call it a business expense, a lot of people do that and they get away with it. But being a good dude, a good person, a good hang, what kind of reputation do you want to have? And ultimately, you don't want to be sitting there in an office in our conference room with the auditor trying to justify a $65 meal and putting you in trouble with the IRS. So just play by the rules. Everything will work out. You'll be all right.
At what point should we start keeping track of those things? The
Now.
tax write-offs?
Every minute of the day.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you're making income right now from your career in music and you've got legitimate business expenses, get great tax advice. Even, HR Block would give you some advice on, business expenses. I highly recommend getting an entertainment business manager or somebody or a tax professional familiar with the entertainment write-offs. But right now, and it's as easy as just putting the receipt in the shoebox or a digital receipt, keeping it in your Apple Drive or whatever, and then you can review it quarterly or at the end of the year. So
For somebody who's performing, touring,
yeah,
and you got transportation,
yeah, that $35,000 bus is a tax deduction.
Yeah.
You need to take that off the top. So yeah, any of the touring expenses, if you're an artist, the one big debate is hair and makeup. If you're doing your hair and makeup for the day and you're going out to have coffee at a coffee shop, and that's not deductible. If you're doing hair and makeup for a photo shoot that's going on a record, an album, that is deductible. But check with your tax advisor. I'm not offering tax advice today. But did you have a question?
What are like a few things we for sure should be keeping track of?
For like music production?
Yeah.
Or just
artists
anything related to an
in
artist?
general. Music.
The big gotchas are always the hair, makeup, and the wardrobe. So a lot of people are like, I'm writing this off. I'm doing this 100%, unless, on the wardrobe, for instance, if it is a outfit that you bought to do a show and it's only used on stage and it's kept in a wardrobe, you take the clothes, you put them on to go on stage, take them off to think Dolly Parton, for instance, her outfit's very fantastic. those are all legitimate business write-offs. But if it's your street clothes and you're gonna go do a show in those street clothes, and then you're gonna go to the coffee shop in those street clothes, those are not deductible. Yeah. But just anything related to, so you could keep track of meals and entertainment. If you're gonna go have a meeting with your manager, your producer, a songwriter, any of those kind of things, check with your tax advisor, but definitely keep the receipts and have a conversation with the tax professional. But any kind of music equipment that you're buying, instruments, those are, majority of those are deductible. There's some limitations, but
Guitar pedals.
guitar pedals,
software.
yeah, all the different tools of the trade that you're using
Yeah.
are deductible in business expenses. They have to be used to create music, not just sit in your house and be a YouTube influencer. Well, you can on some of that, but what else? Any other questions?
Yeah, for many years, I didn't use a tax accountant, a helper. And I was just getting W-2.
Yeah.
It was me and my wife. It was easy, you know. I could do what with the short 1040 form, you know. But when it started getting more complicated, and particularly when I went out on my own on anything, the accounting is well worth. So at some point, you're evaluating during your journey the services you need to go hire for.
Yeah.
Do you have time to do it? Is there liability and risk
Yeah.
associated to it? It's well worth getting experts. I've just come to believe it's well worth paying for experts if you're able to along the way.
Yeah.
If you got, if an artist or a producer got a $10,000 advance, as a business manager, what would you tell them to do with the $10,000? Would it just be the 25% for taxes, or?
Well, are they going to have any expenses related to that 10,000?
Right, yeah,
So
yeah.
we would manage the cost or build a budget around
Whatever their net is.
Yeah. Well, if it's one, pay any costs or taxes related to that income, and then, you know, depending on their cash flow needs, you know, is 10,000 going to last them 2 months? And it depends on their lifestyle. Is it going to last them 6 months? So then you actually build out a budget for that 10 grand and
Yes, you
spend
get them to
accordingly.
build out a budget,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, you know, will get the advances and they'll just burn through the cash very quickly. I used to represent a couple NFL players, and they would get some big fancy salaries, and they would try to keep up with guys that were making 20 times what they were making, and vehicles and homes and bling and whatnot, and it just wasn't sustainable. And so, you know, I would always try to say, here's where we're at, and here's your monthly nut or your monthly overhead, and this is how long this needs to last. And so it's all about planning, cash flow planning, number one job of a business manager.
What about, even at an early stage, like where they're just gonna getting ready to go out and start earning? Savings, investment, retirement. I mean, what do you advise? Is there like a breakdown where you would say, talk about compound interest or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I mean, does anybody in the room save money on a regular routine basis? Yeah. You sock it away in a savings account, or what? You putting it into a SEP IRA or any investment account or anything like that?
Roth IRA.
Roth IRA.
Sometimes I'm not as consistent as I'd
Yeah.
like to be, but
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it's a very personal question, but ultimately, if you can get in the habit of saving, paying yourself first is what they say. Pay yourself first before you pay anybody else. Even if it's 2% or 5% or 10% of whatever comes in the door gross, sock it away in some kind of savings account. Especially if you're young and you're putting it into some kind of equities, as they call it, like stock market and whatnot. Over time, compound interest, and you know, money usually doubles every 7 to 10 years, depending on what's happening in the marketplace. You know, in 30 years, that's going to be a very different conversation you're having than your peers that didn't save any money. So, but yeah, I highly recommend you get in the habit of paying yourself first, save some money, even if it's just a standard percentage. You know, my oldest daughter, she has done that her whole life, and she's got a little nest egg right now. She's like 28 years old. It's like, dang, Tori, all right.
And I think most savings accounts will have an interest.
Yeah.
So you're earning some interest on not just stashing money
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
So make sure you're looking for one of those.
It's, when it comes to savings, it's always about liquidity. Do you have, how liquid, do you need, is it an emergency fund? You know, most popular money managers like Dave Ramsey will say, you know, save 10% in an emergency fund until you get it up to a certain level, and then start investing the difference. So, whatever your emergency fund, if an emergency fund is $1,000, save up until that, and then start investing in some other kind of equity like stock market or what, mutual funds, or typically those are popular.
What do you advise for emergency fund? Because like Dave Ramsey's like, okay, for just like an absolute emergency fund, like if your car breaks down, then like 1,000 minimum.
Yeah.
But if you're like, what's an ideal emergency fund? Is it 3 to 6 months? Is it more like 6 to 8? Like what's?
Yeah, Ramsey's principles are always $1,000 is the first emergency fund that you get, because if you know, car breaks, then you don't have to put it on a credit card to fix it, right? One of your students totaled their car, you know, so they have any cash outlay, if they have emergency fund, they can quickly tap into that cash, and it's liquid, it's easily accessible. And then it's typically, once you get that and start investing the difference, then building that emergency fund up. Some people say 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses. So if your monthly cost of living is $2,000, you know, 3 times that, $6,000 in the emergency fund. Once you tap out the emergency fund, then start investing the difference. That's always a good principle.
I've lived both ways,
Yeah,
where it's month to month,
Yeah.
you know, royalty period to royalty period, and then having a buffer, and man, there's such peace
yeah,
that comes with just diligently creating that buffer, you know.
it's good.
Once you have that or the emergency fund, or I guess I'm thinking retirement, is it smarter to do a Roth IRA or to keep investing, or both?
Yeah, I'm certainly not an investment advisor, and I've always engaged professional investment advisors to do that kind of planning with the clients. But they typically say if you're self-employed, a Roth IRA or a self-employed, a SEP, a self-employed IRA are the best options. If you're on a W-2, participating in a company's 401k program, if it's not-for-profit, 403b, those are always your better options, especially if your employer is matching. They have a matching provision. But if you're self-employed, and most musicians, touring artists, sign writer, publishers, they have a, you know, you're going to be stuck with like a SEP IRA or a Roth IRA. Roth, typically for someone your age, is probably the best bet. But talk to your investment advisor. Don't say I told you that. Yeah. Do you have a question?
I was gonna ask if because I can imagine it must be so much harder to manage somebody's finances if it's like somebody who has a stable source of income through a salary job or something else. Like an NFL player is gonna have a consistent salary depending on their contract, but like a freelance producer or a producer who's receiving royalties or a signed writer, like they have royalties. Of course they get their draw, but their royalties are like from month to month are completely, or quarterly, are completely different. And so is it hard to like allocate certain finances towards certain things or advise them in that way if it's like you have no idea what their income is going to be like in a year from now?
Yeah, that's a great point. Writers typically are on a monthly draw, so they have a monthly flow of cash flow. Artists don't get draws. They usually are reported twice a year, semi-annual period, and most of the time artists don't make artist royalties unless you have a certain level of success. So that's why I say keep your day job, you know, if you have one, because you have to have money, cash flow to pay your bills, or if you're touring and merchandising, those are your other sources. So yes, that's cash flow planning is the business manager's biggest job, is managing the cash flow that's supposed to come in. And if the artist doesn't have a blue collar work ethic, not willing to work, you know, I was working with an artist, she had a great level of success, and then everything just kind of died off. She got dropped from the record label, was doing okay publishing wise, but then her cash began to dwindle, and she started tapping into credit cards. I'm like, no, we don't live off of credit cards. And so I had to have the hard conversation with her. She had a lot of success, was on a couple big tours, was on a tour bus, and now she had to get a day job. And so she's working a day job while she's working on getting another record deal, and has got a new publishing deal now. So it all comes down, depends on the situation, but ultimately you gotta be willing to put in the work and the effort. You have a question?
This might be a dumb question, but can songwriters make a living without a publishing deal, and how do they do that?
Yeah, well, why don't you ask this guy? Most songwriters start off, if they have good enough content, they can get a publishing deal, especially in Nashville. And it's usually a draw of work, Big Machine has a publishing company. And so if you're a starting out writer, anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a month would be a monthly draw that we would pay out to a writer, to a starting writer. So that's most of the time not a livable wage, so they have to do other work. They have to work, a job or a part-time job, or they do side gigs, or they do studio sessions to play guitar or whatever for other artists. So, but if you're an independent songwriter, I don't know, is there a source of revenue for an independent songwriter? You could, I don't know, you got me on that one.
Well, the fastest money is sync, if you can do film and TV music,
Yeah.
because those licenses can be good and quick money. Everything else is royalty streams from performance or streaming, and those are micro pennies.
Yeah.
The publishing business is built on a massive micro pennies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And publishers work because they sign a lot of writers and have a lot of songs, and those few songs that generate enough micro pennies support everything. When you're your own business, your own writer, you have to figure out how to write enough songs and get enough revenue generating profile out there to generate some kind of revenue. Which goes to another conversation we'll have actually next week. We've got Chris Ahrens from MLC coming
Oh, cool.
in
Yeah.
to talk about registering this data management is key to getting any money.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
That's
the
the
other
point.
part of the
That's the
business.
point I was going to make. I mean, there's a thing in the industry called black box royalties,
Mhm.
and there's nobody can determine the full value of these black box royalties are royalties that record labels and DSPs don't know who to pay because they didn't register the songs, or they don't have the proper metadata to pay out these royalties, and it's estimated to be anywhere from $2 to $4 billion worth of black box royalties sitting out there. In ASCAP sitting on a big wad of cash, and BMI is sitting on, and the DSPs. Now the DSPs pay the MLC, and the MLC sits on that wad of cash,
Yeah.
waiting for people to register their songs. So, if you're an artist, if you're a writer, register. MLC, Sound Exchange, all the different places, and there's firms now where you can go one place and they'll register you everywhere. And so, you got to register your content and your songs and titles and
Yeah, because you can work your butt off, and if you don't have the data out there, you're not going to see the
Yeah.
return on your
that's one of the
revenue.
first things we always did when we got a new business management client is we would say, have you registered with Sound Exchange? And a lot of times they wouldn't have. They'd have some level of success, so we go register them at Sound Exchange and we get a $160,000 check from Sound Exchange. It's just been sitting out there in the ether waiting to be paid out. So
Yeah.
but
But to your point, Rich, if you're a writer and you sign to a 12-song a year delivery, a lot of it is co-writing. So let's say you're writing half of the song, so you're really having to write 24 titles to equal 12 songs.
yeah.
And then you're hoping you're going to get some big enough cuts to generate enough revenue to live on. Well, actually recoup your advance.
Yeah.
And then you get the cash flow to actually live on an ongoing basis. And that takes a lot, specifically in the streaming. It takes a lot of streams. So that's not necessarily your optimal place to earn money as a writer. But I'm hoping to do a little economic analysis for my publishing class, and I'll try to share some of that here.
The album I gave you, River and Rail, which is our first Magic House artist, that they're a married couple, and they have 3 sources of income. They're doing shows, mainly house shows,
Yeah.
which are actually profitable. They're selling merch at those shows, selling and buying all this stuff. Then Alex is producing, so he's getting paid a per song production fee. And then Grace is doing song bench, so she's writing custom songs,
Yeah.
which is a great thing. I mean, you get $150 for a custom song.
Yeah.
So there are other services like that. And then, well, actually, she's also teaching some songwriting lessons too. It's that multiple stream thing.
Multiple
that-
streams, multiple
we-
sources of income.
Yeah, and that's I think they're exemplifying the blue collar work ethic.
Yeah.
They're like, how can we do this? How can we stay in the creative lane?
I mean,
Which
ultimately,
think is
if
great.
you're a creative in this industry, you are the product. You're also the CEO and the chief marketing officer, and you're also the chief HR person. You're managing all this, so it's like you're your own business, and you have to operate like a business. There's plenty of books out there that I could direct you to how to run and operate your own business, but until you get to a level where you need to start outsourcing some of those functions to a business manager, an artist manager, and whatnot, it's you. And some of you mentioned worship artists, and was that you? You worship. Your best bet is probably get a job with a church and get on a W-2 and learn and experience, being a part of an organization. And then as you grow and develop, then maybe there's an opportunity for you to, sign a record deal or publishing company, write, all kinds of songs. But most worship artists work that direction. They get on staff at a large church that helps, that has a budget for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And if you're writing worship songs, then you want to be signed up to CCLI as well as ASCAP, Nehemiah, and MLC. So,
Yeah.
but we'll talk more about that. We've just got a few minutes left. Any words of life wisdom?
Yeah, I did some notes, so let me just see if there's something we haven't covered already. There's a famous author named Stephen Pressfield called The War of Art. He wrote a book called The War of Art, and it's all about resistance. So as creatives, every time you feel any kind of like, I should go write, or I should go record this, or I should do that, there's always this something that rises up within you that says, oh, but you need to go check the laundry. You need to go call that person, or I need to get on the internet. That's called resistance, is that you are creative and God created you to create. And if you don't do that and you get easily distracted with this resistance thing, Pressfield really argues that resistance is the number one blocker for creatives. So if you can find ways to press through that resistance and do, even though you don't feel like it, or you procrastinate and push it off, that will really help you. That's been my experience with creatives. Be a lifelong learner, study, read. Leaders are readers. Study your craft. If you're a songwriter, read every book on songwriting. If you're a music producer, watch every video. If you want to do worship arts, focus on every famous worship leader and figure out what they did to be successful. I would say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen, be a sponge, get around super creative people in the field that you want to focus on. You have 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen, twice as much as you speak. And I had register.
Yeah, okay.
And then relationships, again, every job I've ever worked, it's never really been about the work, it's always been about the people that I do it with. And so become a master of communication, learn the soft skills of being a good person, a good hang, and then invest in relationships. They're the things that last, and the things that will, that's where all these opportunities will come from. Little did I know, interning in a recording studio in the 90s would turn into a 6-figure job at a record label because a guy remembered me and liked me. So, I'm not bragging, but those relationships, those very important over your career. Money, I said money, I said save. Save money. Pay your taxes. Set early goals in your career. And another one is don't make your money mad. Don't make bankers mad. Don't make your label mad. Don't make your publishers mad. Because those people are really important to you. Don't make your money mad.
Yeah, don't burn bridges.
Don't burn bridges. So, anything else you want to cover?
What is an album that made you love music?
There she goes. She finally asked the question. Zarita?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm terrible with names, so I remember that name. Very unique. The album that made me fall in love with music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to rock and pop and country music. It was the fabric of my life. I heard it all the time. My dad always had music playing. He got a new wife, and she came in with a bunch of LPs, these vinyl records we call, and I went through. She had a turntable, and I just put every record on that I could find that she had. And I put on this record by a band called Dire Straits, and there's a song called Sultans of Swing. When I heard that, I got goosebumps right now just thinking about that song. I heard that song, and I was like, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to be a musician. I went the same day and bought a guitar and started learning Sultans of Swing. So it's like those are the influences. But real quick side story. I grew up listening to all that, and I dated a girl, and her dad said, if you want to date my daughter, you got to give your heart to Jesus. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't have any clue what that meant. And so I went through this prayer, and then he gave me a Bible, and he said, all that music you've been listening to, Scorpions, and Led Zeppelin, and Megadeth, and all, you can't listen to that anymore. You need to listen to Christian music. So he took me to the Christian bookstore, and he bought me an Amy Grant cassette back in the day. And then I got Michael W. Smith and Petra, all the bands that he's got double awards for. And I started listening to that music, and then I was reading my Bible, and I was like, wait, there's a correlation between this music. And so that music informed my faith, and I started growing a faith muscle. So, when it comes to Christian music business, which I know Lipscomb is very connected to with the GMA and whatnot. And so, music has power. It can transform your life. And so Christian music has a huge part of my history and my life. And, I pivoted into country music and pop and hip hop, but ultimately, music is super powerful. So it's a great question.
I hope you still listen to rock and roll.
I do, all the time. I have my new favorite band, if you want to know. It's an artist named Goldford. I don't know if you guys have heard of it.
What is it?
Goldford, Goldford. If you listen to Goldford, he's coming to Nashville in January. I'll be front row. He's my new favorite artist. So, anyways.
All right.
Is that
Cool.
Goldford you just played?
Maybe.
Okay.
Joshua Sloan.
Joshua Sloan. Nice. Cool. Any other questions? Thank you all. You've been an awesome.
Great. Thank you,
awesome
Rick.
project. I wish you all the success, and if you ever need anything, it's always I'm always available. Anybody that has questions or needs advice, anytime. So cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
I
Wish
think
you all the best.
I'll get a contact from him that I'll